What is going on? How is everybody doing today? Ben Morgan of the Fins Up Network. And in today's video, we're back to some NFL draft talk. We're talking non-position of need targets for the Miami Dolphins in the 2023 draft. Now, positions that I consider to be positions of need would be, and this is going to vary for everybody, but for purposes of today's video, I think our positions of need: running back, offensive line, tight end, linebacker. I kind of want to add cornerback, safety to that list, but after trading for Jalen Ramsey, after signing Deshaun Elliott, I'm going to leave them out for today's consideration. So that means today's video, we're going to focus on some targets that play quarterback, wide receiver, interior defensive line, edge, cornerback, and safety. Now, I'm going to cover probably 5 to 7 guys. There's going to be more than that the Dolphins could and should target, but that is where you come into play. Any prospects that you have thought of that I did not bring in today, you know what to do. Drop them in the comments. Curious to see who I left out that you would have on your list. Now, let's start off with a fairly interesting one because I don't think anyone thinks the Dolphins are going to target a wide receiver, especially after we just signed Chosen Anderson. I can't get over the name change. Regardless, I also don't think that signing a soon-to-be 30-year-old wide receiver is going to influence the Miami Dolphins' decisions in the draft whatsoever. Now, like I said, is it very likely, considering that Josh Downs is what? Wide receiver 6, overall player 49, according to the NFL mock draft database. That would mean we would probably need to pick him at 51 if the Dolphins wanted a wide receiver. Now, the only other way this happens as well is if that they're truly going into this draft saying, we're taking BPA at every single position in the draft, and Downs happens to be their guy. Because if you look at the team, it's Tyreek, it's Waddle. I talked about Anderson. You got Ezukama, who you invested a 4th rounder in. You added Berrios. You've got Cedric Wilson still as of this. He's still with the Miami Dolphins as well. So like I said, not a position of need, not what you would consider to be a top priority for the Dolphins, but there are some rumblings that, you know what, if you could add Downs to this system, if you could put him in the slot, if he could contribute, maybe not necessarily from day one, but think about, we've already had Tyreek talking about his retirement, whatever, 3 years down the line. Not that's a huge concern by any means, but if this offense wants to get explosive, if they want to add another pass catcher right away, Josh Downs could be that guy at number 51. Let's go to the defensive side of the ball. So I kind of cheated here. I got 2 interior defensive lines. You got Carl Brooks out of Bowling Green. You got Jermon Dexter out of Florida. Now, Dexter is ranked defensive lineman 9. Brooks is defensive 10. So you're looking at probably 3rd to 4th round projected players. We've got the pick in the 3rd at 84. Don't have a 4th, but if we were to trade back later, maybe you target a guy like this. But as of recording this today, we don't have an extension with Christian Wilkins. Plus, both Wilkins and Sealer, their contract are due to expire after the 2023 season. Now, if you've been living under a rock, you may not have heard this. However, most everyone else, the Dolphins aren't really being super secretive. There are plenty of reports out there saying that they've been doing their homework on these guys, especially Carl Brooks. I've seen his name a couple of different times now, and his name in general is just shooting up draft boards right now. But between Mike McDaniel saying, you know what, I want to draft a defensive lineman or an edge player every single year in the draft. That's like his favorite non-offensive position to draft. Plus, Vic Fangio's interest in the position as well. If there's any unknown right now with Christian Wilkins or with Zach Sealer, don't rule out the idea of drafting an interior defensive lineman. The Dolphins haven't been shy about it. The reports that we're hearing, they have not been shy about it. And then one other name you could keep an eye on here as well. The big guy out of Baylor, Siaki Ika. If I don't think he personally falls to 51, but if he does, don't rule out the idea of him being on the Dolphins' radar with that 2nd round pick as well. We'll stay on the defensive side of the ball. For this next one as well, Antonio Johnson, he is the 2nd rated safety in this draft. Once again, NFL mock draft database has got him at the 56th overall player. So once again, you're looking at a guy that you'd likely have to target in the second round at pick 51. And I talked about it when I did my NFL draft player profile on Illinois safety Sidney Brown, who you could legit just throw into this mix as well. Probably more so in the third round, being a little bit lower ranked safety than a guy like Antonio Johnson. But what I talked about in that video was the idea that this safety position for the Miami Dolphins could look significantly different after the 2023 season. Because, yeah, you got Javon Holland, but keep in mind, Brandon Jones, final year of his deal. Deshaun Elliott signed to a 1-year deal. So this position could look a lot different. And with Vic Fangio's kind of love for safeties, especially safeties that can cover, you know what? Maybe they find a guy that he really likes in this year's draft in rounds 2, in round 3, get that guy into the system right away. Maybe not necessarily use the rookie year as a redshirt year, but a year to get into the system, get familiar with what Vic Fangio wants. And then who knows with what happens with Elliott, with what happens to Brandon Jones, maybe this player could be in line for a bigger role, a lot more snaps in 2024. So keep your eye on safety as well. And trust me, I kind of took the easy way out with the interior defensive linemen, talking about 3 of them. I'm really, really going to take the easy way out with cornerback, because if you look at the cornerbacks that are slated to come off the board in rounds 2 or 3, there are names galore that aren't just good and quality guys, but it's guys that the Dolphins have been tied to through reports, through with what we're hearing. And actually, there's one more on this list that I didn't even add, and that's Emmanuel Forbes. I truly don't think he'll be available for the Dolphins at 51. I don't want to call him an Xavier Howard clone by any means, but the dude knows how to get the ball and he knows how to finish with it. What did he have last year? 6 interceptions, 14 throughout his career, tied for the most ever interceptions returned for a touchdown in FBS history. The dude is a ball hawk, but just look at the names listed there as well. Guys that'll likely be off the board before 51, but also going to be in that 51 to 90-ish range anyways when it comes to cornerbacks that are coming off the board. And like I said, it's not a need right now. You got Xavier Howard. You've got Jalen Ramsey. You have arguably one of the best duos at cornerback in the entire NFL. But man, cornerbacks age. And guess what? Like we said about the safeties, if Vic Fangio wants to get his guy, get him in there now. If it's a best player available scenario and you got to pick at 51 or 84 and one of these guys is on the board and he's your best player available, get him into the system now. Let him learn behind those guys that have essentially Hall of Fame-esque resumes. Who better to learn from than those 2 cornerbacks and Vic Fangio as well? So like I said, it's not a position that I would desperately say need. Re-sign Nick Needham. We have the emergence of Kader Kohu. So no, it's not even a guy that would necessarily need to or even compete for snaps already in year 1. But to think that they're just going to bypass on cornerback when the guys that we have are going to be like 29, 30 years old, and with this class being as good as it is, I wouldn't rule out the idea of them saying, you know what, one of these cornerbacks is best player available. We are going that route. But like I said, those are some of my targets. Keep an eye on non-position of need. If you get anyone on your list that I may have left off of mine, let me know. Want to hear it in the comments. But that is my time for today, Dolphins fans. And until next time, fins up.